And good evening, good afternoon, willkommen, guten Tag. There are only two things you need to remember about this panel. Innovate or die. Innovate or perish. You can read any number of studies in our books and you'll see the same thing. The firms, the companies, the nations, the societies that don't adapt, that don't grow, that don't innovate, they perish from the face of the earth. The other thing to remember is that old aviator quote, and I'm not an old aviator, I'm an old swole. Speed is life, more is better. And at this point in time in our complex confrontational world, the two guys who are more responsible than anybody else in the naval services are right here to talk to you about the future of naval innovation. We've got Rear Admiral Lauren Selby, Chief of Naval Research.
My Marine friends, that's right.
If you don't know him, get your computer out and you can Google it. I'm not reading no bios because we don't have time. And Mike Brown, who's the director for DIUX. If you don't know what that is, again, get your phone out. We're going to have their remarks, conversation. They got some slides that'll be going on here. We'll go to Q&A. I'm going to tell you, questioners right now, there's a microphone. Line up. You get to ask a question, not make a diatribe statement with a question melded inside of it. A question. Gentlemen, over to you.
All right. Thank you very much there, Sink. Really appreciate it. Thanks, Sink. Appreciate that. Wow. Hey, where's Matt?
Right here, sir.
What happened to music?
We got started early.
What? All right, you play at the end. All right, got it. I had some pump you up music. Well, we'll play it at the very end, so it's all good. Hey, wow, it is awesome to see all of you. Okay, so all of you are my change agents, okay? Our change agents. And this is exactly what I need. I need a group of folks that are government, academics, small business, large business, all of us coming together to try to solve some of these really Gordian knot, intractable kind of problems that we're facing right now. I am all about trying to go fast, trying to move technology more rapidly to warfighters, okay? And again, I am naval, so Navy and Marine Corps for me. Mike's more defense-wide, and so I think the things that we're doing we'll share those with Air Force, Army, Space Force, other. But we need to, this is a call for action, folks. This is a call for action. Anybody that's heard me speak over the last probably 10 or so years have heard me talking about the world we live in today and how rapidly technology is changing. I graduated from the University of Virginia back in 1986, okay? And at that time, the world, as far as naval warfare was concerned, the Carrier Strike Group was the centerpiece of our warfighting doctrine. I'm here to tell you it still is today. Now, has it changed since then? It has changed, okay? It has changed, and it is a very capable force, and I am not here to say that it's not. But I'm also here to tell you that the world has changed dramatically in that period of time. There has been more technological change in that 30-some-odd year period than we've had since probably the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, okay? And that pace continues today at a very rapid clip. We are struggling with ingesting that technology at a pace that is relevant to the warfighter. I think most of us in our personal lives have more technology at our fingertips, and we recognize that it changes in our hands as we're holding the phone probably daily, with new apps being pushed to you, software updates being pushed for either the iOS or for the application that's on your system or whatever your Android device if you're not Apple. You've got more in the hands there than most people have in their warfighting capabilities or in their business capabilities. If you're in a non-digitally native company, which the reality is most companies are still not digitally native. There are very few that are. So if you're in one of those companies or if you're in the US government, we struggle with trying to find ways to adapt technologies. So I am on a mission to try to find ways to come up with new processes, new procedures, whether it's new contracting methods, new ways of experimenting, bringing warfighters into the problem set earlier. I'm more about solving problems than setting requirements, okay? I'm trying to get us into this digital era that we live in, drive us there very rapidly so we can adapt much more quickly. Now, let me just pause there. I was the chief engineer for the Navy. I'm a Rick River trained officer, so I am steeped in the belief of understanding your systems, better than anybody else in understanding the reaction of those systems to whatever actions you take, opening the throttles, tripping off a turbine. You want to understand that. And I was trained to know the procedures, by memory, and to know what my system was going to do when I did different steps. And this is the most important part. And when something didn't go as I expected, whether it was better or worse than I expected, I was trained to stop, and we call it critique, but I was trained to stop and study the situation until I understood the root causes of why the system responded the way it did, vice the way I was expecting it to. And then taking the lessons that came from that and putting those back into my procedures, back into my training, so we didn't make the same mistake again. When I look at the world today and the way it is responding to the stimuli that's happening all around it, whether it's the war in Ukraine, China's actions in the South China Sea, I want to stop and I want to start asking why is the world acting this way? Because I think we're in a pivotal moment in history where things are actually going in a very, very unstable fashion, and we need to try to change that. And I'm going to do my part from the inside of the Navy and the Marine Corps to try to provide a framework for the ways we can actually test, operate, experiment, and then adapt and adopt capabilities very rapidly and get them to warfighters so they can solve problems. And to do that, I brought along a friend of mine, Mike Brown, who can tell you a little bit about himself and why he's here. So Mike, over to you, and then we'll continue.
Thanks, Lauren, and great to be here with all of you, and especially to be up here with Lauren, as we've gotten to know each other quite well over the last few months here. So my background completely different, coming from the private sector. I spent most of my career in Silicon Valley at a hardware company and then a software company, Symantec, before coming to the Defense Department. So you can imagine my surprise coming into the Defense Innovation Unit saying, why are we still working with this technology that's 10, 15 years old? Why? Windows 7? Really? So my frame of reference is we need to be working with commercial platforms. There was a time when the Defense Department was producing most of the R&D in our country and the world. In 1960, the Defense Department and the primes were 36% of global R&D. That's a phenomenal statistic. Today, that number is 3.6%. So there's a lot more happening outside than is happening inside the walls of the Pentagon. So how do we get in touch with all of that innovation that's happening? And you see it right now in Ukraine. I mean, this is incredible what we're witnessing. A 20th century, very industrialized force. They have other problems too, morale, et cetera, working joint operations. But look at the gear they're working with, and look what the Ukrainians are doing. We've got commercial satellite imagery that's assisting them. Drones, what an impact. I see these Russian tanks with the turrets blown out. They're working incredible comm systems. A private citizen, in the form of Elon Musk, is enabling some capability with comms. This is a very different world than the one of the Pentagon in the 1960s, where we were able to think we can predict the future, we can plan in sequential processes, we can bring capability in decades and still have it be relevant. That world's gone. So we need the sense of urgency that Lauren just talked about to make sure that we're getting on with where commercial technology can help us. That's my vantage point, is having spent my life in the commercial world and seeing the pace of change, and how can we get the military to be taking advantage and leveraging all of what's there. You'd be surprised from some of the reporting that's done. Companies want to work with us. They want to help us. I see some reporting that says that's not true, but at the Defense Innovation Unit, we looked at proposals from 1,120 companies last year, 40% increase over the year before. We fielded 43 different capabilities to the Defense Department. So companies want to supply us with the latest gear, but we have to figure out a way to be able to ingest that, and something we're not quite as good at today.
Yeah.
So this world of technology changing should have us be thinking, is what we're fielding today what we need for the future? I'll turn it back to you, Mark.
Yeah, and I think the Ukraine crisis is actually a great example of what happens when you take what I would consider Russia, former superpower. I don't think they really have made the leap into digital. I mean, certainly maybe some segments, so that maybe they're fintech or something, but for the most part, it's a very heavy industrial military complex. Okay, it still is. And look at what's happened in Ukraine. So they've been thwarted by, again, Elon Musk's basically providing Starlink capability communications. So you've now got a billionaire that's actually impacting the ability of a former superpower's strategy. You've impacted that. That is actually, that's mind-blowing. That'll just make everybody here just go, wow. I mean, it's incredible. But look what Russia, look at how they responded. They responded to that. They have basically gone back into 20th century warfare, siege warfare, siege mentality, because they are not able to keep up with the digital pace of change. Okay, that should really get all of our attention here. Then look at China. So China is a nation that's really building its military right kind of in the height of the digital revolution, maybe the cusp of it, but certainly enabling digital tools, digital capabilities that they're putting into their systems. Now, they're not perfect by any stretch, and they are not 10 feet tall, but they have got kind of a lead on us when it comes to adopting digital tools and technologies. We're kind of in the middle, so we're kind of the bridge between the two. We've got a lot of older systems that are not quite there, and we've got some new ones that are there. So our mission is how do we bridge that to ensure that we bring all those up to the right level of standards in a way that we can actually respond in a rapid fashion using digital tools. So if you've seen some of my thinking, one of the things that I've pushed for is this idea of needing a kind of a hedge strategy, a plan B, let's call it that. And again, this is not to replace anything we've got. This is just to add additional tools to the toolbox, as it were. And so the idea is that we utilize digital principles to design really a highly autonomous fleet of heterogeneous things that is not just a collection of things, but it's really they're knitted together in a fashion that they can actually provide an effect. It might just be providing awareness, situational awareness. It might be that they're actually delivering some type of effect. It depends on what the mission could be. But to get after that, I think we have to change our mindset. And again, I'm trying to change the mindset about helping fleet commanders by actually trying to solve problems vice solve requirements. And that is a different mindset. And it puts you in a different space when you're trying to solve a problem vice fulfill a requirement. I see a lot of heads nodding, right? So if I've given a requirement, I've already kind of constrained myself to this solution set here. If I'm thinking about this, it's more of a problem, and I open my mind to how can I solve that problem, and better yet, I open the pathway of communication to all of you and try to get your ideas, I think you're going to find that we can come up with solutions that we've not even probably conceived of yet. And certainly, probably many of which actually exist today that can solve the problem right now. And so part of this that I'm trying to get after is set up a pathway where we can provide the problems to the right audience, provide a venue where we can do some type of down select, maybe in a modeling and sim environment, maybe with a true, physical environment where you actually have to come and show us what you can do, and then taking from that the best of breed and finding ways to very rapidly scale up. This is the challenge, though, right? To do that, you have to have kind of the ability to move money today very rapidly. Okay, and we all know the challenges of moving money in an existing fiscal year. Okay, to say nothing of when do you get the money because of CRs, but once you've got the money, it's in certain PEs, and so to move money from one to the other, you very rapidly bump up to a threshold where you have to get additional authorities. There are so many steps required to get to a yes that it's a wonder we ever do. We do, but it's very hard. That friction causes a lot of impediments to innovation and the ability to go fast. So part of my strategy is to develop pathways to actually provide the opportunity for you to bring your device, your thing, your software to me in a venue that I can actually evaluate it. And then if it passes the test, we take that to the next level. If you've heard my Scout event, that's the first place I'm trying this out. And we're using something called a commercial solutions offering to get after that. Basically, we put this out on a broader announcement, told you about the problem set. We've gotten nearly 100 companies came back with ideas. We're going to take it to the next stage later this year. We're going to go try things out. And if things pass the test, I don't have to compete. I can now go straight to contract with the winners of those different categories of the solution set. That is a whole new way of doing business that will actually allow us to go faster. The other piece of this that's not yet solved is the money piece. We still have got to solve that piece because to do this, you've got to have that flexible funding. It can't wait till POM 24 or POM 25, right? By then the problem is gone, or it's morphed so many times that whatever solution you had on the table is OBE. So we've got to change that. And one of the ways we might change that is to work more closely with Mike at DIU and some of the ideas he's got for doing just this.
So one of the things when Lauren first told me about the head strategy that got me excited was thinking, wow, a lot of what he's talking about is commercial technology. How do we harness what's happening in all the innovative companies, all the entrepreneurs to use what they're developing, whether it was new capabilities in space, some of the things that we're seeing here at the show in terms of autonomous capability on the water, undersea, in the air. This is pretty phenomenal. We're not experimenting enough with this today. There are things happening at DoD to experiment, but if you look at the budget and the manpower and how those are allocated, it's very lopsided with what we're doing traditionally versus really playing with some of these new concepts. And the idea has occurred to us that, my goodness, large adversaries have studied in depth our way of fighting. In many cases, they've stolen our designs. So if we're in a conflict, the way Russia is today, with adversaries who have our gear or something close to it and have studied our operations, that's going to be a strategic surprise in the wrong direction. So that motivates us with a sense of urgency. So hedge strategies, as I think about it, is one, we need to create that element of surprise, and it's got to be probably through commercial technology because that's the way we get there most quickly. And it includes something that Lauren likes to talk about, the SMART, the many for resiliency.
Small, agile.
And small,
Yeah.
and small and agile.
Yep.
So you've got to start combining some of these elements. We've got to experiment with those to make that work. So putting that together really is what creates the head strategy. And then as he talks about the money and the contracting, that's something we've experimented with now 6.5 years at DIU. So we have some of what we need in that. With the contracting, we use something called, very boring, non-consortium other transaction authority. But it's basically a commercial process. How do we do what Lauren said? We don't start with requirements, we start with a problem. And who's out there got something to say to us about how they're going to solve that problem? If I start with requirements, I'm minimizing competition because I've already told the market what I want. With commercial technology, we don't need to tell the market. They've already built it. We just need to figure out how are we assessing that and how do we get it fielded more quickly. So we're starting to think about what are some of the things that would need to change, not starting with requirements, maybe a different process to validate a need. Second thing would be using more of these authorities we already have in the department that really model what the commercial world is doing. One of my favorite quotes about the FAR comes from Senator Dan Sullivan. He said, what we need to do with the FAR is make that top secret, have the Chinese steal that and set them behind 2 decades. So we're laughing, but we're laughing because it's true. And then third, the budgeting. So as Lauren talked about the money part, we have to figure out a way to do that more flexibly. Our idea is we need to think about capabilities of record instead of programs of record. So programs of record you might need if you're building an aircraft carrier, but if you're buying a piece of software or flying a small drone, you sure as heck don't need to spend 10 years studying that, telling the vendors what to build, et cetera. In fact, the commercial market is iterating on those capabilities every 12 to 18 months. So what we need to do instead of telling them what to do is figure out who is the best at supplying that, provide the money so that we can continuously assess and then field that capability. Imagine that. That's just a completely different concept than how we think about what we're going to field at defense.
Yeah, and if you adopt this idea of being kind of a fast follower of what commercial technology is doing, we also have to get out of our mindset of thinking we have to own everything because we don't necessarily have to own it. This might be something I just lease. Maybe I just tell a company, I want you to put a sensor in this part of the world and provide me the data, whether it's EO/IO or it's IR or if it's acoustic, whatever the data is. If that's all I want, I don't care about the device, I care about the data. It's a different mindset. So if I can contract for that, I could have a contract-owned, contract-operated kind of strategy. So just do a kind of a COCO model. There may be sometimes you want to own some, maybe you do, but I think we tend to default to, on the government side, that we have to design it, build it, and own it. And yeah, we're going to compete and someone's going to do that for us, but we do so much of the legwork up front that, quite frankly, is already being done by many companies out there today. And we cannot keep up with that pace. And so if we just kind of say, let's check our ego at the door, we're going to just go with what industry's already got, we're going to contract for that, we're going to take the data. We have to get out of the mindset this is about hardware. It's really not about hardware. It's about the data, the analytics, AI, whatever, you apply to the data. That's where we've got to drive our thinking because it's hardware centric. That is very much industrial. We've got to get past that. We're now digital. Again, not advocating for saying we don't need the big high-end things. Sometimes, you sometimes do. But I think you're going to see this century, we're going to progress to a place where we are heavily into the digital. And there's going to be many, many more autonomous systems and sensors along the way than we have right now.
You know, thinking of the sense of urgency and speed reminds me of the conversation I had recently with Admiral Aquilino. If you talk with him about what he's planning for and thinking about in Indo-PACOM, he said, I don't have time to wait for the next integrated priorities list to make it back to the Pentagon and a service to feel something in decades. I'm going to be well past my next change of command. I want capability that I can field in the next 1 to 2 years. That screams commercial. If we're not evaluating what that is now, figuring out how to field that and experiment with that, then we're not going to be able to deliver what he needs to prepare for the next conflict. And there are some groups where this is happening today. I think about Task Force 59. Do you want to talk about your support?
Yeah, so obviously Task Force 59, we just did a great exercise over in the Middle East. Had over 100 companies came to show what they could do with autonomous systems and sensors. So I think that is a great example of base of the fleet comes out, got a problem, we want you to help us with wide area search, keeping track of shipping, maritime domain awareness. All these companies came in with different systems and sensors, provided that to show the Fifth Fleet Commander, Brad Cooper, what could be done. Okay, that's a follow-on to something we did year before in San Diego, the Integrated Battle Problem 21. So you're seeing a series of these events that are starting to happen more frequently. We've also now got the Unmanned Task Force, which is looking to find ways to be more fiscally agile. And so the Vice Chief Naval Operations is committed to try to find ways to help free up money in year of execution. That's a great first start to helping do some of the things that I'm talking about doing. But I think eventually you're going to need a more sustainable process that doesn't have to wait for the mid-year review or the end-of-year sweep-up to do that. Again, that's a great start. We're going to keep working that. But the Unmanned Task Force, Task Force 59, are really starting to uncover both in goodness what can be done with a lot of these COTS systems and sensors, but also starting to unearth some of the obstacles that get in the way of us going fast. The money agility, the contracting strategies, those are the data handling. That is obviously a huge challenge with us. So those are things that are being uncovered that we're now having to find ways to go after. So that's one of the the great things that are come out of this is that we've now got 4-star buy-in on trying to find ways to go faster, and we're trying to provide ways to do that. And I'll just say one thing about that. So someone asked me recently, is the leadership supporting what you're trying to do? And I said, yeah, they actually are. They are very receptive to change, trying to go faster. But what I have found is that those that have worked in acquisition for decades, I'm about 15 years in after coming off the waterfront command of a submarine. So I've had 15 years in this, okay? And that's not as long as some of my friends out there that have been longer, but that's long enough to really understand the complexity of the problem set. Everything from the contracting, the timing, the build process, the test and evaluation, all of those aspects of what we do. Most folks in leadership that were not acquisition have not had that insight. And they may have brushed on it in a tour in OpNav or some other part of their careers, but they've not had that insight. And so as a result, for most of them, and they've admitted to me the same, our problem is a black box. It's a black box. It's very opaque. They don't really see what's inside of it. And so it's going to be upon us, those of us that understand this, to tee up ideas, tee this up in a way that they can understand it and then take action on it. And so that's what we're trying to do. What I'm trying to do, that's what the Unmanned Task Force is trying to do. It's tee these things up in a way that folks like the Vice Chief, ASNRDA, and others can actually help us take the actions necessary to actually allow us to move faster.
Yeah, I think what we've observed is there's been so much work done with Congress and the department on acquisition reform. I mean, you've heard that until you're blue in the face. Frankly, there's been a lot of work that's been done. And so acquisition reform is no longer the limiter, but we haven't reformed the other processes that go hand in glove with acquisition, requirements and budgeting. So it's now time to turn our attention to that. Requirements we can change within the department. We don't need Congress to tell us what to do. We need to get on board with how do we work with these concepts more quickly? How do we field what's already commercial as opposed to, again, telling the commercial market what to build? So that part's within our own power. budgeting, the money flows where we need a little bit of help from Congress. So whether it's this capability of record idea that I just threw out, or just giving senior leadership like Lauren here some flexibility. You don't have to tell us in excruciating detail by line item what we can spend on, and don't move money from one category to another, don't change colors. All those constraints slow us down. Look at the amount of manpower we spend trying to move things around because the system wasn't designed that way. It's something the private sector, which is where I spent my career, it's completely a foreign concept, right? Money is money. Don't tell me about colors and when it expires and use it or lose it and all those strange concepts. So we need a little bit of help on that part with some flexibility or a concept that Congress can fund. With that, we'd be unstoppable. We could really move quickly to field these new capabilities, get them funded, and start getting some experience with these new concepts. And I think that's so important because this will complement the exquisite platforms we have, and we can combine these capabilities in new ways. Right. That will provide the element of strategic surprise we're looking for if we have to go to war with someone.
Yeah, and again, a lot of the things that we're talking about, even these ideas that have come forward in Integrated Battle Problem 21 or in Task Force 59, they're not all going to work. Okay, and we get that, and that's okay. But the sooner we can actually experiment and go prove to ourselves that it will or it won't work, the better off we're all going to be. And I think we all know some of these will work. They're not all going to work, but some will. And those are the ones we're going to want to pick and scale up. We got to find ways to do that more rapidly. Hey, one of the other things that I want to talk about is the Valley of Death. Okay, some of you heard me. I jokingly call it the mode of despair. It's that chasm between the point where O&R can take something to about TRL 5, 6-ish because of the type of money we got, 6, 1, 2, and 3. That's about where we kind of end. It's at that point that we have to find a partner on the other side of the valley. Okay, that's usually a PEO. Okay, that's usually where it is. Could be a warfighter operator, but usually it's a PEO. That program executive officer has to have the right kind of money, has to have the right timing, the right modernization, the right acquisition strategy. All these things have got to line up perfectly for them to say, yeah, that's a technology that we want, and then to apply the money to further mature that technology to TRL 8-ish, maybe 9, all the way to 9 if they can, before they actually say, yep, let's put that into modernization to put it on a submarine, aircraft carrier, whatever. That marriage it's amazing it works at all, but there's so much friction in that, and so many things have got to go right to make that happen. That's why we have the Valley of Death, because many things fall into that valley because you can't get that alignment. Additionally, there is no single person in charge of that bridge across that valley, right? There's no single owner of that. I think we need a person that owns that, and I think it should be me. Okay, I think I do. So I think I need to own that bridge, and I need to be the one that helps the PEOs, works with them, works with the warfighters, the operators. And again, not everything will pass because not everything should pass, but more should pass than does today. If somebody owned the bridge and had the right authorities and the right money, and again, this is money that's beyond the 6.3, it's more 6.4, 6.5 is kind of money, maybe 6.7, but it's not, it's 6, 1, 2, and 3 gets you to TRL 5. That's kind of where we get you. We got to have additional authorities over that side. There's actually a conversation happening right now in the Pentagon about how do we do that. Again, I think the irony here is it wouldn't take that much of that pot of money. Okay, it really would not take that much. If it was properly focused and concentrated by one entity instead of dispersed across all the different PEOs, I think you would find it'd be much more efficient, and you'd have a process that you could actually repeatedly bring things across the valley, or at least have a vetting where you decide kind of what goes on to the bridge, right? And then if the bridge is built, it can then proceed across the bridge to the other side and then give it to the PEO. And at that point, if some fact-of-life thing changes and we can't transition it, at least you could put it on the shelf as a mature technology that you could potentially pick up later and put onto a platform. Today, we don't really have a bridge owner. Everybody's a bridge owner. So in fact, like nobody's a bridge owner. So we need that bridge owner. We need some additional flexibility on the monies, and we need to have somebody that kind of shepherds things, again, to a point where you can test an experiment in a way that's relevant to who will be the owner of the tech, the PEO or the warfighter, and then if things that get kind of the upcheck, it then proceeds into the hands of the right program to be incorporated into either a new platform or a modernization of an existing thing. That is also something we need to figure out how to do, and that will also require some unique strategies, unique contracting, some unique experimentation approaches to be able to find ways to actually, again, put those ideas, those tech in front of the right stakeholders on the other side of the bridge. But to do that, you got to have a bridge. And so I'm trying to do that as well.
Well, what makes me excited about that is thinking about if we create that, how many more companies and entrepreneurs and investors we can get excited. One of the things that if you read what VCs are saying about working with the Department of Defense is, I never know what happens, even if I get a contract, how much ongoing revenue does that mean to me? And that makes them question whether they want to keep supporting the companies, some of which you've seen displaying here, in terms of funding their future cash flow. But if they saw that that bridge was created across the valley of death, well, now we create that virtuous circle where an investor sees, they actually got some large recurring revenue. That makes me not only want to fund them, but fund other companies they're going to start up and support the Defense Department. And given that my boss, Heidi Shue, just came out with 14 technologies she says are critical to national security, 11 of those are being commercially led. So only a few, like hypersonics, directed energy, electronic warfare, those are defense specific. So we can go at our own pace maybe, although we've got a pretty strong adversary in China on our tail there. But for these commercial technologies, we're not in control of those. If our adversary is moving faster, they're going to get the jump on us. Here's what we've got to make sure we can not only move quickly, which is what we've been talking about here, but we've got to motivate more private investors to make those investments so where they can deliver more capability for us to use. And for that, we've got to show that the loop closes. There's a business case to be made by working with the Department of Defense. Without closing this valley of death or creating the bridge across it, we don't have that.
Yeah, and that got reaffirmed to me actually a couple weeks ago talking to a bunch of venture capitalists. They said the same thing to me. We know you can't promise contracts, but if you at least had a mechanism where we knew there was a repeatable mechanism where we would at least have a chance to show you what we've got, we would have much more buy-in for investing in companies that you think are relevant. And so again, they're eager to work with us, and I'm convinced there's segments of our economy out there that are just totally untapped by us, by the DoD, by the Department of the Navy, and I think we need to reach into those folks because I think, if you look at the history of this country, I mean, small businesses have been the engine that's driven us, and then working with large businesses to figure out how you integrate those into the right systems we've got today. That's all critical to our future success as a nation. And again, the pace is got to pick up. I mean, the imperatives now, if what's happening in Ukraine today, what you're seeing in the South China Sea with islands being built as fortified aircraft carriers throughout the South China Sea, ICBMs that can take out ships and the DF series of missiles, if that doesn't convince you that we have got to have a different approach, I don't know what will. But I will tell you, I'm concerned, but I'm also optimistic because I have seen what we can do when we come together as a team working these kind of problems. I think it's trying to find how do we strike the right balance of collaboration, yet have some competition. And we got to have that right mix of those two things. But there's got to be more collaborative spirit between, again, government, industry, and academia trying to solve these problems. And I think if I come to you with problems, vice requirements, I think that begins that journey and that conversation. And so to that end, I'm committed to finding a way this year to establishing some type of a town hall series where I start having a discussion with all of you in a repeatable way to tell you what I'm thinking, what the problems we're trying to get, to garner your ideas. Maybe to solve problems, but maybe just more generally to get your ideas and get them on the table, along with the thinking that I've got and some of my team's got on how to solve this problem we're talking about today.
Yeah, I think there's an analogy in history here that goes back to the space race that we fought with the Soviets. Kind of an irony here that Russia's captured everybody's attention because the real long-term competition is with China, not with an economy that's probably smaller than Italy's today. So China is on the move. They had more space launches than we did last year. We have to really pay attention to how they're able to bring all instruments of national power together to displace us as a technology superpower, and then by doing that, grow their economy and, I think in their mind, displace us militarily without ever firing a shot. I think that's their strategy. We can't sit by as that occurs. We're in another tech race. It's broader than just space. There's probably about 10 different technologies, AI, cyber, autonomous systems, where we have to, with our allies, be at the forefront. So we have to marshal the political will, the capital to make sure that we don't get behind, and we're fielding the best technology, not only for our economy, but to support our military as we look at the next couple of decades.
Yeah. And I'm committed, as I know Mike is, doing everything, whatever time I've got left, to do what I can to change, not just the conversation, but our behavior and our actions so we can actually adopt tech and move faster. And I think with that, ready to go to questions?
Yeah,
Let's go to
I'm
questions.
ready.
Yeah, we really want to engage your thoughts and questions. So,
Okay, so again, microphone is right there. I ask that you don't do a diatribe, but a question. And to get people warmed up, I will start. Something like 70%, depending on the platform, 7% of the cost is swallowed up in sustainment for different platforms, ships, tanks, blah, 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 blah. How much activity, how much energy, how much progress has been made at trying to get after the sustainment issue, either at DIU or not?
yeah, I'll just speak to my experiences. So I think a lot has been done in that area, but not enough. And one of the things that is going on that is exciting is condition-based maintenance. We're doing a lot of work in that area. I see Captain Black back here who worked with me in 05Z back in the day, and I see some of my 05Z friends here as well. I think that's an important area where we can use data analytics to help us focus the maintenance on the right things and also, basically assess the health of an operating ship or unit in situ and then be able to actually, as that ship then proceeds into a port, before the ship even gets to port, kind of know what the health of the ship is and what things need to be done to it when it gets there, having parts ready, maintainers, et cetera. I think that would be critical. But what I'm trying to get after, and again, we got to solve that for the big things which we're going to have, but if you also now adopt a strategy that these smaller, more agile type devices that are, mostly attritable, if you go after that model for a lot of your data sets in the future, you don't maintain them. You just keep them for as long as they're operating. Or if I'm contracting for it, if I contract for it and I need it for 2 months, when it's not being used by me, if someone wants to use it to go explore natural, the oil, natural gas stuff, go for it. I mean, so I don't even have to maintain it. That's the case. So we'll shift some of that burden away by contracting for stuff instead of owning and maintaining. Or I don't want to say throw away, but let's recycle stuff that you don't need. So that's another way to do it. But anyway.
I totally agree with that. Think about what Apple thinks their sustainment strategy is for the iPhone. It's for you not to have it more than a couple of years. We need more and more of our thinking about platforms to move there. So you can't do that with a ship, but you could do that with making a ship more modular, open systems approach. Congress has instructed us to do that, but I'd give our report card pretty low marks on that. So the more we think about systems of systems and how do we make sure the software is not connected to the hardware and refreshing that iPhone strategy could pay a lot of dividends for us in the military.
It won't help with me and my wife because we've got an iPhone 1 that we still are operating. So.
Well, you need to upgrade then.
There you go. Sir.
Sir, Ray Compton, fellow at LMI. Good to see you again, gentlemen. Going back to my history of working with you all, of working with DevCom and RDCom and all that stuff. So taking the question a little bit differently, when you talk about speed of relevance and we talk about Valley of Death, you currently look at what you're doing, sir, with the task force, what's going on Project Convergence, Ms. Hsu with joint capability demonstration, Lisa Saunders at SOCOM with the experimentation. Over the past 3 or 4 years, we've started to bring in the operators, the logisticians, the force management, the budget folks, the acquisition folks, to find a balance between you and them, because it's always been the 100% tech solution. But how do you now find, like you said, keeping stuff on the shelves where instead of the 100% technology, go to the 80% so we can bring not a technology, but a supportable capability, quicker, budgetary, supportable, and logistics for the future?
Well, I think it's spot on. You got to take a cross-functional approach. Again, the world that I come from, the business world, we've been doing this since the 90s. So you don't do a sequential process where engineers work with it for a while, and then I'm going to hand it off to marketing, procurement. No, you have to get the people around the table and make sure that those who are going to operate this new gear have an input with the designer. So that's what we're doing at DIU. We don't start a project unless we've got the end user, the warfighter involved, who helps us evaluate the potential solutions and give feedback to the vendors. That's got to be more of a closed loop than long sequential process if you have any hope of delivering capability in a year or two instead of a decade or two.
Plus, if you're a digitally native kind of organization or company, you get into this mindset of you deliver a minimal viable product. It's an MVP, and you get it out to the users, and you iterate. You iterate, and you're constantly iterating to make that better and better and better. And so if you have that mindset, it's not just, to your point, it's not sequential. I don't just deliver it, wait till the next delivery. No, you're constantly iterating on that. And we just are not framed in a way to do that for the most part. We have some little segments where we can, but for the most part, we're not architected really to do it that way yet. And we've got to get there. Got to get there.
Ma'am?
Hi, Amy Jordan with the Hampton Roads Alliance. Sort of a two-part question. Number one, how do you work with Tech Bridge, Naval Tech Bridge, especially since those are kind of in areas that are easier to reach? And also, since most of the new technology coming out is going to be in the entrepreneurship community, how are you engaging with these startups and helping them to prove their technology so that it can be adopted?
So the tech bridges are part of NavalX, and NavalX is actually part of ONR. So ONR, we have AdCon, so administrative control of the tech bridges and NavalX. They report operationally to ASNRDA directly. But ASNRDA has given me a great discretion to kind of mold them and help them, help my strategy go forward. So we're using the tech bridges and NavalX to reach out to small businesses around the country, around the world. We have a tech bridge now in London, also one in Yokosuka. Okay, so we've reached over outside the borders, and they've got Tech Talk. They've got basically a podcast. So we're using that to inform, interview folks to get ideas in, and they're going to be a part of my outreach to companies as I start these town halls I'm talking about. So NavalX and Tech Bridge will be a part of my strategy for how we reach out to folks around the globe, around the world, around the world, literally, to help us with ideas here. So that's to your question there.
Maybe from a DIU's perspective, so we love the fact that the tech bridges are out there to raise awareness. A misnomer about DIU is that we shop cool tech to the Pentagon. That is a waste of time. We have to identify what is that end user warfighter with the urgent problem, leadership support, and budget. So back to where the money flow. If we don't line those things up, we don't have a prayer of getting a transition so that vendor actually has a production contract and recurring revenue. So we line that up first, then we go to the market and say, what have you got? Again, not requirements-based, but what can you do to solve this problem? Then when we take them through the process of testing it in a military application, well, now the customer is lined up wanting to implement and buy something. So for the services is providing a great opportunity to bring in the commercial technology. Some of the companies who are aware of DIU might be a little disappointed that we're not their business development function, but honestly, that just wastes their time. If we don't have the things lined up to make sure it's a successful transition, we can't help them anyway.
Yeah, and also to your point about getting the sailors out, the Marines involved earlier, there needs to be this experimentation machine that I talked about that's kind of always running. And I don't mean like a RIMPAC every 2 years. I mean like it's a perpetual machine. Sometimes it's going to be virtual with modeling and sim kind of testing, but sometimes it's real. So we have got to do that. Task Force 59 is a great example. Naval Special Warfare, Admiral Wyman Howard out in San Diego. When he's got his platoons that are not deployed, his SEAL platoons that are not deployed when they're back home, they're doing experimentation. They're testing new tech. So some of these pockets of excellence are starting to get started around the Navy. It's that kind of a model that has this kind of perpetual ability to kind of evaluate technology. Folks like Mike or I can bring ideas to them with tech. We can have some experimentation. We can see what they like and don't like. And we can work with the vendors. Things we don't like, we can give them feedback. And maybe they come back later with it improved. Things we like, we got to figure out a way to scale. And we got to still solve that piece, but that will at least get them involved earlier, because without the warfighters' buy-in, it's worthless, right? It may be great to me or some bureaucrat in the Pentagon, but I want the person who's going to use it impacted by it. That's important. So, yeah, thanks for your question.
Sir?
Hi, my name is Anthony Fuller. I'm with Carasoft. Kind of building off the last question, you guys had touched on, posting problems, looking to get our, feedback, having town hall meetings. Could you, elaborate a little bit, how do we find these and get in front of you guys? It will be posted, like the old RFQ, RFI processes, or is it, set to be a little bit different?
Yeah, so what we typically use, we use like broad area announcements to get words out to everybody. So some of this is actually sensitizing you that, hey, we're broadcasting, so you know to listen, and you know where to listen. So we've got to use our tech bridges, our NavalX. We've got to use our social media. We've got to be better at letting you know hey, there's a signal in the noise, go look here. So that's part of my strategy is we're going to try to use that. I mean, I've got pretty good social media presence out there, and so does Naval Action Tech Bridges. We're going to use that to sensitize, the force that there's a perturbation in the force. You need to go look at it, and we'll direct you there. So that's something that's part of my strategy is how do we ensure, because again, there's parts of the economy, there's businesses out there that have no idea what a broader, they have no idea how to find us. They have no idea. So we've got to help them. And that's what we're trying to do with some of these, these outposts I've got, tech bridges. So, thank you so much.
Yeah, we're trying to look at when you have an industry that you're trying to understand or penetrate, like AI, cyber, autonomous systems. How can we understand who's out there before we ever start a project? Because we find those companies are not looking often for what a BAA is. So we've got to reach out and basically do some pre-selling to them. That's part of what we're doing at DIU is understand what that landscape looks like before you ever get the first assignment. Otherwise, we're just turning to the same players all the time. We're not growing the vendor base. So we brought 100 new vendors to DoD in the last 6 years.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I see Bob Smith here, my small business guy. So, I mean, we've actually been doing a better job of actually bringing in different companies to our SBIR process every year. So some of that's with social media, some of that's with outreach. And so that's really important we do that to get different folks, different ideas in. Jeff.
Jeff Hoyle, Elbit America, and I appreciate your gentleman's comments today. I think you've got a very willing audience here to help you accomplish your goals. And my question, I'd like to dive down a little deeper into the bridge analogy. So can you elaborate a little more on how you're building this bridge, how you're funding this bridge?
Yeah. So,
and also, your vision. Do you see this bridge becoming a one-lane swinging bridge that's hard to get across, or a four-lane superhighway?
Kind of
four-lane superhighway. So right now it's made, like I said, it's made out of bamboo with bubble gum and baling wire, right? And again, when it works, it's very unstable, and then it falls down after something gets across. It's going to be a superhighway. That's where I'm trying to go. So to do this, I've already got buy-in from ASNRDA. He said you should own the bridge. So that's step one. So I'm building strategies for what that looks like. Okay, so it's kind of who on my staff is going to help me do that. And then again, the funding piece is critical. So again, the vice chief is committed to trying to find ways to be more flexible within the current FY. Again, that's a good first step. That's not enough. Okay. The other thing is I'm also the Naval Science and Technology Executive. Well, it turns out that in law, it says that the Naval Science and Technology Executive has the ability to influence the expenditure of naval innovative science and engineering funding. Notionally 219 funding for anybody out there in warfare centers. So that is 2% of the money that goes into a working capital fund organization is devoted to doing, well, 4 things, but 2 of which involve accelerating technology, right? Moving things across the bridge really is what it does. So Mr. Stephanie asked me to look at that and figure out how can I put a little more influence on that. So we're going to actually hold our first a meeting with all the warfare centers and all their leads here coming up soon, just to talk about the strategy. And again, I don't want to totally overdrive it because I think there's some goodness in letting a little bit of serendipity happen there, but I want to give a little bit overarching kind of guardrails so I can keep them on the bridge, right? I don't want to fall off the bridge. I want to keep them on the bridge. But I want the bridge wide enough that will take some of their ideas that maybe I'm not thinking about, but some guy in a warfare center thinks is a cool thing to try to do. Okay, let's go. But I want to give you the kind of the 2-star backing and really the 4-star from ASNRDA backing to drive across that bridge. So that's how I'm doing it. We're kind of building it, as we fly it, as it were. But this is how we're going to go, and we're going to make some mistakes. But as we learn, we'll perfect it and make it better and better as we go across the bridge. So, thanks, Jeff.
I just hope all the small businesses have enough tokens to pay across the bridge.
And that's a really important point, and that's one of the things that I think we need to figure out how to ensure we do, because while it's one thing for a fairly large company, out of IRAD or internal investments to come and put forth ideas, it is a totally different animal for a company that's trying to get started. And they may have the best idea out there, but if they don't have a couple nickels to try, so we've got to figure that out. And that's something that's also in my my action list. How do I go do that? Because we've got to have the ability to. I can't just you can't just always pay to play, as it were. I've got to be able to pay you to play sometimes. So, good point.
All right, shipmate. This will be a good one.
Jim Raimondo from the Digital Transformation Office. Related question, the part about culture that you talked about, that quick iteration, embracing failure or whatever, that is not who we are as a service for the most part. So maybe a little bit of discussion on the talent management part of that culture from both perspectives, OSD and Navy.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. I mean, I was actually having a great conversation with somebody a couple days ago about this whole thing about, we always say it's safe to fail, safe to fail. And everybody's like, yeah, it's not safe to fail. You fail, you don't get promoted. And that's sort of true, although I will tell you, I mean, I'm square peg round hole kind of guy, so I do value failure, and I do actually sometimes embrace it, even highlight and say, hey, this was a good thing. So, but that's me. Talent management. So here's one of the things that I'm doing. So we just started last fall an Innovation Navigators course. Okay, this is a class. It basically brings in cohorts of folks. I've got a contractor help me run that, and we actually, it's not so much. It kind of is teaching people how to innovate, but what I think of it as, more importantly, what I want to do is I want to train leaders how not to kill innovation. Okay, that's really what I'm trying to do. If I can teach them a little bit about how to innovate, how to do some design thinking, if I can do that, that's great. But I'm really trying to sensitize, especially senior leaders and leaders in positions where they can have influence over programmatic and money flows. I want to train them how not to kill innovation. Okay. And that's actually easier to do than teaching them how to innovate, okay? That's critically important because there's so many times I've seen well-intentioned folks, ask questions, demand briefs by 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. It's almost like, give me innovation at 9 o'clock in the morning or you're fired. It doesn't work that way. You guys know that. So that's what this Innovation Navigator course is trying to get after. Sensitize people to what it is, how innovation works, how the importance of serendipity, like I just mentioned a minute ago, but really more importantly, train them how not to kill innovation. That is critically important. Okay, so that's something I'm doing. We're started the second cohort just recently. I think this last week. So that is something I'm going to try to continue, keep that going, and try to get as many folks through that class as I can over the next couple of years, because I think that is really important. So that's one thing I'm doing with this. The other thing I'm doing is I want to work with the Naval Academy, with the Naval War College, and the Naval Postgraduate School. And I want to help them develop an innovation curriculum. And I want to help them figure out what courses will help, same kind of thing, not kill innovation, but also some cool projects and maybe some things they're doing that involve design thinking, bringing in outside groups, help them solve problems. So I want to do that as well because I think that is critically important, and especially that we start with our most junior leaders. And again, I'm a Navy ROTC guy, so I want to make sure that I get this out to the ROTC units as well around the country. So that's something I've got a team actually helping me figure out how to go do that. But I think that's critically important because if you don't change that, that culture, aspect of what you're talking about, I think that's important. And again, I don't know if I'll ever be able to change the safe to fail thing. I'll try. We'll keep trying here. And it's all scale, right? I mean, there's one thing to fail when you're at the beginning of a project. It's another thing to fail with a $5 billion program. Okay, I got it. But we got to find the right balance there because, I agree. We say that a lot, but I think we don't always walk that talk. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to add 2 points about culture that really are informed by my spending my career on the private sector side. So one is we have phenomenal people at DoD and the military. I'm so impressed with the talent we have. My goodness, we make their jobs hard. So we don't give them the tools and we don't reward with incentives the risk-taking behavior and moving at speed. So if we were able to really prioritize speed and outcomes rather than process and structure, my goodness, I think what we could do would be amazing. But that's going to take some leadership from the top to reinforce that. We have to move at speed because we have an adversary now that's so much more capable than the Soviet Union ever thought of being. And we have to be focused on outcomes. And the Pentagon is so rooted in process. There's instructions for everything. Well, yeah, that accomplishes one thing, but it places tremendous risk on our warfighters. I think that's unacceptable. We can't live with that.
I did 6 tours in the Pentagon, and I did notice that the Valley of Death is the same zip code as the Pentagon.
Right in the center.
And it's extra large because there's 5. Good afternoon, Ryan Fitzgerald. In working for ONR and now supporting ONR, I know that you guys are greatly in favor of disaggregated mass effects, small disposable things, disposable like bullets, count them in that, supply them that way, count them that way, never expect them to come back, just like bullets. But we don't see that culture in our budget requests and certainly not in the actual budget, right? I actually asked this question at the last panel and didn't love the answer I got. which was we're doing it, but we're not. How do you see that you can help make a change? I mean, we talk about sustainment being the massive part of a program. Exquisite systems suck up so much money in their sustainment. What if we could take that money, put it into buying capability that we don't support and sustain? And so, like, how can we get to changing the culture of what we're even requesting, so to move from these large, exquisite systems that we don't want to risk in the WES to disposable, lethality, disaggregated, masked systems that can really make a difference for our warfighters?
I thought you were going to help me answer that question. No. So that is the the $100 million question, or the $100 billion question, as it were. Some of this actually has to do with working with the Hill in gaining trust of the right leaders, members, and staffers, that we have got actually a viable plan with competent leaders that are passionate about this, and we're willing to work with them, willing to be transparent with them to help solve these hard problems. I think that's critically important. I mean, look, I think it's roughly 25 PEs across my 6, 1, 2, and 3 accounts, and that's like having 25 checkbooks in your house, right? And let's say one checkbook is for your car. Actually, it's for car repairs. And let's say that checkbook is a little low, and your car is in the shop, and it's more than it's in that checkbook. You can't get authority to move the money. It's too hard. But you've got another checkbook that's full. And so instead of fixing that car for, $1,000, I'm going to go spend $25,000, $30,000 for a new car because I got money in that account, so I'm going to use that money instead. That's ridiculous. That's kind of that's the mentality that I think we get into with these multiple PEs that I think we got to be careful. I know why we got them. Okay, I understand why we got them. And I understand a lot of this was from bad behavior. To be frank, it's bad behavior on the part of folks that have been in my role and other roles in the government. I mean, we've not always done what we've said we would do, and that resulted in the Hill saying, "Look, guys, we got to put more curbs on you. We got to strike a balance here, and we got to get back with the Hill and work with them closely." So I'm doing that. I'm having conversations with a lot of folks about this, trying to convince them that, look, I've got a plan that I think is sound. I'm a willing, passionate about this. I've had every single job in and around acquisition, 15 years into this, and I think I can help do this. So that's part of this. It's trust. Got it? That's at the heart of this. It really is. But you got to find ways to kind of single up lines on those P's so you don't have too many, because it just gets too hard to move the money around. And we've got to find ways of flexibility. There's this new commission that just got in law by the NDAA to go look at the PPB issue. That unfortunately was on hold because of the CR, but now the money's out, so that will go. I think it's 6 months. I think they got 6 months to come back with something. So there's a team that's going to look at that, and one that happens to be a friend of ours. I think Raj is on that. So we've got some into that. We'll be able to have hopefully some influence over some of their findings. We'll see, but that could also be helpful. Mike?
No, totally agree. Everything you said.
So this is a final question,
All right, Bob.
sir.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Bob Smith, Department of Navy, SBIR.
Not too hard.
Gentlemen, what would you say if I told you I know right now where there's $1 billion at DOD that has no requirement attached to it, and it has no budget activity assigned to it in RDT&E?
Give me the checkbook.
That kind of a program.
Give me the checkbook.
It's there. It's called the Navy SBIR, and Dr. Shu has that account.
I feel strongly about this. I don't think you're going to like the answer, which is this is fantastic opportunity for the military, because in addition to what the Navy has, there's $3 billion across DOD. There's a reason why it has research as part of the grant. That should have a specific purpose. Today, that's not tied to how we're going to pull that into a program. We get so many companies excited about SBIRs. There's no pull. There's no connection to the PEOs. A lot of those companies are frustrated and come to DIU saying, what's the connection? We don't make that easy. So they're there without a bridge. And that's not the solution to commercial technology, is more SBIRs. So many people are saying that around DOD. It's research. There's a place for that, but we need a much stronger pull mechanism for existing commercial companies to get what they're offering to DOD funded with recurring revenue, again, for that virtuous circle, to get more investors excited about that. So we need to think about those in two different spheres and optimize, rather than today mushing that together.
Yeah, and I do think there's a great role for the cyber process. I think it's phenomenal. But to Mike's point, you need to have a bridge still. So the bridge part is still a problem there. We still got to put that in place to take some of those across. And then more broadly, we need to have some other flexibilities to have additional monies to go after some of those other companies that are not necessarily in the cyber category. So, but it's definitely a viable product. I'm going to come down and talk to some more companies after this. So awesome.
Gentlemen, any closing remarks?
I'm so glad to be partnered with Lauren on this.
Yeah, no, Mike, and same with you, Mike. It's fantastic. And I tell you, I really it's phenomenal to see the number of folks that came out here. Obviously, you're all excited and passionate about this like I am. So this is going to take a team. It's going to take a team to go solve this. This is hard work, but I know you guys are all, able-bodied and ready to help me. So, please join me. If you haven't seen a role for you in this journey, then let me know, because I got plenty of work for you. But thanks you very much. Thanks to the Navy League for having us.
Thanks so much.
And thank you all.